um, Old Testament prophets. So yesterday we began to discuss about, and we talked about the first prophet, right? Again, one more time, let me show you how are we studying, right? Our, these Old Testament prophets. How do we study? We study according to the time period, right? So we were saying, yes, right here. We said, according to the dates of each prophet, who are the first prophets, who are the last prophets. So you have first Obadiah, second Joel. So they're all 9th century prophets. So that is what we need to understand. Obadiah prophesied when Elijah was there. If you want to know, Elijah plus Elisha, or whether it's Obadiah was prophesying. So it was about that same time Joel also prophesied. So yesterday we talked about Obadiah. Today we need to talk about Joel, right? As I said, I'm not going to say this is a very long notes are given to you, but I'm not going to look at to the authorship and things. Something that you can look at, but I want us to look at today the interpretive issues, right? Interpretive issues. The first interpretive issue is about the army of chapter 2, right? If you have read Joel, right? Joel, then you will see, yes, chapter 1, you have a locust plague. All right? Locust plague. Chapter 1. But chapter 2 also talks about another invasion of army, right? It is also called as locust. But the question is that locust real literal locust, or is an invading army under the guise of locusts, right? That is the question. All right, I'm not going to delve into details because details are given there, right? So conclusion, let me say, because I wanted to go to something else, right? Something else. That is, yes, chapter 2 is talking about locusts, but it is talking about a future army, human army, because chapter 2 is describing events within the future DOL. Remember the word DOL? Day of the Lord, right? So that is what we are going, that's what it is actually says. So the deliverance promised following the city's devastation appears final with no further judgments. Clearly says that chapter 2 is not talking about literal locust plague. Rather, at the end, armies will come, attack Jerusalem, Israel, and finally there will be, it's a northern army is coming, and it is talking about tribulation periods and things like that, right? So it is in the context of eschatology. Eschatology, chapter 2 is to be interpreted, right? So that is the conclusion. But I wanted to focus today on a famous passage, right? What is that one? Joel chapter 2, right? Joel chapter 2. And this is quoted in Acts chapter 2, right? Acts chapter 2. So I want us to read this passage. Let's look at Joel chapter 2. You have a Bible? Please open. I want one of you to read verse 28 to 32.
Joel chapter 2, sir?
Yes, Joel chapter 2, verse 28 till 32.
And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. And also on my men servants and on my maid servants I will pour out my spirit in those days. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of the smoke. Then sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. And it shall come to pass that whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said, among the remnant whom the Lord calls.
All right. So this is what Joel says. All right. Now let's look into Acts, right? Let's go to Acts. Acts chapter 2. We already read, but now we need to look at again verse 17 to 21. Right? 17 to 21. Let's look at Acts chapter 2, verse 17, from 17 until 21. Let's read.
And it shall come to pass in the last days, says God, that I will pour out of my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your young men shall see vision, your old men shall dream dreams, and on my maid servants and on my maid servants I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they shall prophesy. I will show wonders in heaven above and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the room into blood before coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. And it shall come to pass that whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved.
All right. So 21, we says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Now, the question here raised concern in the issue of fulfillment, right? Question is, did Joel prophecy was fulfilled in Acts chapter 2? Right? That is a question. So, there are three positions on this matter. Three positions. Number one, Acts 2 is the fulfillment of Joel prophecy. That is the one of the common position. Most of the people say, yeah, Joel prophecy is fulfilled in the book of Acts. That is a one. Number two, second problem, Acts 2 is a fulfillment of Joel prophecy. Yeah, it is a fulfillment of Joel prophecy. Yeah, so Acts 2 is fulfilled. Right, Joel prophecy is fulfilled in Acts 2, but there are other things. Not everything is fulfilled in Acts 2. Others fulfillment will be following later. Right? So half is fulfilled, half is not fulfilled. Second position. The third position is Acts 2 is not a fulfillment of Joel prophecy. Right? Acts 2 is not a fulfillment. Peter is using Joel 2 by way of an analogy to illustrate activity of the Spirit in connection with the salvation. Right? Right. So, what I'm going to argue for the third position. That Acts 2 is not a fulfillment of Joel prophecy. Rather, it was used as an analogy to talk about the work of the Spirit. All right? How do I say? First of all, Joel 2 is in an eschatological context. Right? That is end time. End time. Eschatological context. Because this is what you read, right? In Joel, when you read Joel chapter 2, you read as yes, it said, and afterward, right? Or after these things, right? Afterward. So this is really, if you look at chapter 2, as you read down, and then you look at chapter 3, verse 1. If you look at chapter 2 and chapter 3, you will see this is clearly what? Eschatology. For example, I will read chapter 3, verse 1, right? This is what we read, Joel chapter 3, verse 1. In those days, and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem, I will gather all nations and bring them down to Valley of Jehoshaphat. Valley of Jehoshaphat. Clearly, this is talking about the war of war that will take place at the end times. All the nations will come to war against Jewish people. So clearly, Acts chapter 2, if you look at the context, 2 and 3, in the context of eschatology last time. I'm saying Joel 2. But Acts is not that one. Acts is simply beginning of the church. And any attempt to see fulfillment of Joel in Acts chapter 2 would violate the context of Joel prophecy. It simply violates. This is a wrong interpretation if someone says it is fulfilled. There is number 2. First of all, I say context. Second, there is no fulfillment formula employed by Peter when citing Joel prophecy. If you really look at it, you will not read Peter says, Joel prophecy is fulfilled today. Or no, Peter did not say. What Peter said, this is what Joel wrote or written. Right? Then he quotes the passage. So there is no fulfillment formula is used in Acts 2. Third, the only common denominators between the items mentioned in Joel prophecy and events recorded in Acts. Okay, what is the common denominators? Common incident that happened is what? It's simply the work of the Holy Spirit and offer of salvation. 2 things. Work of the Holy Spirit, right? Second, salvation, offer of salvation. That is the common thing, whether in the Joel prophecy or in the book of Acts. Only 2 things are common. Nothing else that is included in Joel prophecy is specifically identified in Acts chapter 2, assuming the distinction between prophesying and speaking in tongues, because Joel, you don't hear about tongues. Joel doesn't speak about tongues. Joel speaks about prophecy. Right? But that is not what taking place in Acts chapter 2. Right? It says in Joel, you see, your son, I will pour out my spirit upon all people. Right? All people. You know that in Acts chapter 2, spirit was not poured out upon all people. No. There are a lot of people who spirit did not work. And your sons and daughters will prophesy. You don't see that one in Acts 2. And anything that is written there in Joel prophecy, you don't see that in Acts 2. Fourth, Peter does not cite the entire passage in quoting from Joel prophecy. Why? No. Did he leave out anything? He did. Peter deliberately did not quote everything of the last verse, right? For example, Peter stopped in verse 32 this way, and everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. He did not say, for on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, there will be deliverance. He did not say, as the Lord has said, among the survivors whom the Lord said. He did not quote the last portion of Joel prophecy. Right? Why? His citation stops at the key point to which he draws his audience attention. What is that? Offer of salvation. Because there, that the first portion of verse 32, we read, Joel says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. There, Peter stops. He doesn't continue. Rest of all. Peter appears to employ Joel prophecy because Joel spoke about the activity of the Spirit of God. And it announced the offer of salvation. That's all Peter wants to say. Peter is not saying Joel prophecy is fulfilled. Now, again, one more clue, that is fifth one. In book of Acts, Peter says in chapter 2, this is what Peter says, verse 16. Verse 16 says, verse 15 and 16, right? What is verse 15 says? These men are not drunk, as you suppose. It's only 9 in the morning. So it is early hours, because some people said, you know, these people are drunk. Others said, oh, they are declaring wondrous works of God in our own birth languages. But some people said, no, these people are drunk. Now, Peter wants to refute and say, no, they are not drunk. This is only 9 in the morning. Then he says, he says, now, this is what spoken by the prophet. So you see the word this. In Acts 2:16 is explained in 2:33 as the activity of the Spirit. So if you look at verse 33, Peter concludes there. He says, exalted to the right hand of God, Jesus Christ, he has received from the Father the promise of the Holy Spirit and has poured out what you now see and hear. So Peter clearly says, he quoted Joel prophecy to explain this is the activity of the Holy Spirit. That's all he wants to say, right? This is the activity of the Holy Spirit, similar to what Joel spoke about. That is what he was saying. So, did Joel prophecy was Joel prophecy fulfilled in the book of Acts? Answer is absolutely no. Then why did Peterson quote it? Yes, he quoted to explain that Bible in the Old Testament itself talks about work of the Holy Spirit. This is the work of the Holy Spirit taking place now.